It is that time of the week, the Dynasty waiver wire show. Some deep Dynasty waiver wire ads or stashes that you should be targeting for your Dynasty teams. And I'm early this week. I was late last week. I apologize. I'm early this week. You're getting this early. So hopefully it should be before your waivers run. And we're going to jump right into it with starting with the quarterback position. And real quick, before we do get started, if you watch this video and you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button for us. We're trying to get to 800 subscribers by the end of the month. We're 50 away. We got about half the month left, a little bit more than half the month. I think we can do it. Help us get there. And also, there's a link to join our Discord in the description of this video. It is free to join. Join our Discord during the off season. We're going to try and put together some listener league, Dynasty leagues together. I'd love to get some Dynasty leagues started. So join and we'll start putting that together. Join the community. So into the quarterback position, Carson Wentz, I brought him up last week, and he did move up onto, before he wasn't even ranked for Keep Trade Cut. Now he's up to QB 77. And this is just if Mahomes gets injured type of insurance, especially later in the year as the Chiefs continue to win. They are, 9-0? Have they had their bye week yet? They have not, or they have already. So they're 9-0. They're going to continue to win. So, if Mahomes gets beat up, like a serious injured, then Wentz is going to be a starter. But even later in the year during fantasy playoffs, like if he's beat up and they're kind of already looking good for the number one seed, then you can kind of, potentially bench Mahomes and get a start out of Wentz. So just good insurance for Mahomes or Carson Wentz, a decent quarterback on a good, what we think is a good offense. So, and Nick Mullins is another one here. I've seen him dropped in some leagues, and I'm probably going to be picking him up just in case something happens to Darnold or Darnold turns into a pumpkin a little bit. We saw a game from Darnold last week where he looked a little bit more like the old Sam Darnold. Now they escaped. They won the game. And, every quarterback's allowed to have a bad game. So I'm not trying to crap on Sam Darnold or anything, but we've been kind of waiting for him to turn back into a pumpkin. I don't personally think it's going to happen enough to where he's going to get benched. But there's always that possibility. And we've seen Nick Mullins come in and throw for 400 yards on this team. So, just something to keep an eye on. I would definitely be rostering Nick Mullins, even as injury insurance, not even just if Sam Darnold gets benched, which I don't think he's going to. And then CJ Beathard. Now, this is a guy who I think could get the start even without an injury to Mac Jones. It sounds like Trevor Lawrence could miss the rest of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does. Like, why come back to this team? They should be tanking to get a first-round pick. CJ Beathard, we've seen him look decent in the past. Most of it was with San Francisco, CJ Beathard, that is. But we've seen him throw. He has multiple games of throwing for over 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, we only really seen that with San Francisco. I think he started one game for Jacksonville last year. 2023, he started one game, and in that game, he went 17 for 24 for 180 yards. Nothing to write home about. But I think he's better than Mac Jones, to be honest, and I wouldn't be surprised if they move towards Beathard just to kind of get any semblance of an offense or something. And again, any starting quarterback in Dynasty Superflex, as you guys know, especially in these deep leagues, are important to roster. Into the running backs, the guy I always bring up, Hassan Haskins. We saw him get a touchdown against his old team. I think that was just a little bit of kind of a, FU to the Titans. I don't know if it's an FU, but like, revenge game type of stuff. But Hassan Haskins, the Chargers are a super run-heavy team. They want to run the hell out of the ball. If something were to happen to Gus Edwards and or J.K. Dobbins, we could see an expanded role for Hassan Haskins, especially if Dobbins gets hurt, who, isn't the picture of good health. I hope he stays healthy. He's having a great year, but just something to throw out there. Chris Brooks is another one here. He is on the Packers. If you didn't know, I used to bring him up when he was on the Dolphins, but he's on the Packers. Marshawn Lloyd, I don't even know if this guy's going to play the entire year. Chris Brooks is getting a little bit of work. The last 2 games he has played in about 25% of the snaps, which is nothing to write home about, but he caught the 3 passes for 28 yards last week. And if something were to happen to Emmanuel Wilson or Josh Jacobs, we could see an expanded role for Chris Brooks. We could, so right now Emmanuel Wilson's getting about 5-6 touches. Chris Brooks is getting about 5-6 touches. What if Emmanuel Wilson gets hurt? Well, Chris Brooks could potentially jump up to getting 10-ish touches with a couple of catches. And then you're talking about him potentially being a deep dynasty flex. Kendall Milton, we're in that time of year, guys, where, week 10 just happened. We literally have 11, 12, 13, 14. We have 4 more weeks until the fantasy playoffs. Either you're out of it, you're locked to make the playoffs, or you're in that, middle mode. If you are out of it, you should start trading players and veteran players, getting picks and young players in return. And if you're, opening up roster spots to start stashing some guys for next year. Kendall Milton is someone that I potentially would think about stashing for next year. He's on the Bengals active roster. I think he was an undrafted guy to the Eagles originally. He's now on the Bengals active roster. He's a bigger back. He's 6'1", 230. He had some intriguing numbers when he was at Georgia. He never had the full workload or anything like that, but some intriguing numbers. He's a little bit of a slower back and things like that. But you just look at this situation for the Bengals. You have Zach Moss, who has a neck injury, which is kind of serious. They have a potential out with Zach Moss. You have Travion Williams, who's been on the Bengals forever and never done anything. And then you have Chase Brown, who still has a couple more years, right, on his rookie contract. But what you're looking at is potentially Kendall Milton being the RB2 for the Bengals next year, I guess is kind of how I'm looking at it. He's a guy that if I'm out of it, I'm going to think about stashing this guy. Jace McClellan is another guy for the Falcons. They drafted him this year. He's out of Alabama. He is a little bit of a small – it's not smaller. He's 5'10", 215, but he's more of a special teams kind of guy. He's very, very slow, runs a 4.71. But they drafted him, which means they have some investment in him. Just someone maybe for the future you want to stash, these younger guys who we still don't really know what they're going to be like. We see these guys come out of nowhere every single year. Like no one had anyone on this guy on their radar, and he comes out of nowhere and he's a stud, right? Or at least he becomes fantasy relevant. Joshua Kelly, keep trade cut RB 118. He recently got elevated to the Titans active roster, which means, obviously you have the injuries from, Spears and Pollard. Now they seem to be healthy or so, but Pollard's been beat up. Obviously he's been bothered by this injury. Spears missed some time because of the injury. So, if something were to happen to both those guys, I don't know if it's going to be Julius Chestnut. Maybe it's Joshua Kelly. Maybe it's both, but he's a guy on a run-heavy team. He's on their active roster. In those deeper dynasty leagues, I don't mind a stash. Cody Schrader is another maybe for the future stash. He's on the Rams active roster. Obviously, he's behind Kyron, Blake Corum, and Ronnie Rivers. But, you have Ronnie Rivers. Who knows where he's at next year? Kyron Williams, is going to be on this team. Blake Corum's going to be on this team. But Rams are one of those teams. I keep talking about it. I want every running back that's on their active roster. So, Cody Schrader, he's a rookie. Some people liked him coming out of Missouri. I think he led the SEC in rushing yards last year. So the dude was productive. He was productive at Missouri. He was 8th in the Heisman voting, had over 1,800 total yards, led the SEC in plays from scrimmage or touches, I think, and rushing yards. He caught the ball, scored 9 touchdowns. So, just someone, again, like we never knew Kyron was going to be what he was before he became what he was, right? Rams just seem to do that. They find these guys, and Cody Schrader's an interesting one for sure. Jordan Mims, I think this is a little bit more for this year. Jordan Mims, who, you have Jamal Williams, who's beat up. I think he's been missing some time on their injury report. Yeah, he's not playing. He's inactive due to a groin. So right now, Jordan Mims is like the RB2 behind Alvin Kamara. And every RB2 should be rostered, and Jordan Mims is probably out there. in a lot of leagues. What if something happens to Kamara, who is just getting worked, right? 35 touches in 2 weeks ago against the Panthers. This last week in week 10, 22 touches. He's getting absolutely worked. That gives you more opportunity for injuries, right? It gives you more opportunity for injuries. So, a guy like Jordan Mims, who's the potential RB2 for the Rams, I definitely want to be rostering. Sione Vaki and Craig Reynolds, I put tight end any three of them should be running back 83. He's the running back for the Lions. Lions are one of those teams I want all the running backs on the active roster. Sione Vaki maybe is available. Craig Reynolds, who's technically the RB3, is probably widely available. If anything happens to Montgomery or Gibbs, you're going to see an increased workload for one of these guys. So I want them on my rosters. Keelan Robinson. This is more of a futures guy. He's been on the injury report. He's been on the IR since the beginning of the year. He is kind of a return specialist more than anything. I don't know if he's ever going to be a guy that's getting a significant amount of touches. So unless you play in return yard leagues, maybe you want to pass on this. He's a smaller guy. He's like 5'9", under 200 pounds. At Texas, he didn't necessarily, he only had 12 carries last year at Texas, 8 catches. But he was a return guy. He was a pretty talented return guy. So I think that's why the Jags probably drafted him, because of the new kickoff stuff. But who knows? Who knows? He's a rookie who has some speed as well. He runs a 4.4 low 4.4s, a 4.42, I believe. This is more for the future, or if you play in any type of return yardage stuff, or if your league's going to be moving to return yardage stuff. And Keelan Robinson, who is, I think his window to come off the IR, I think this might be his last week, actually. I think it opened up a couple weeks ago at the beginning of November. I think this week is kind of his last week, his 21-day window. Hopefully he gets active, and hopefully we see him. If not, he's done for the year. Into some wide receivers, Kayshon Boutte. I think he's probably rostered at this point by a lot of people. I mentioned him several weeks ago and saying, hey, this guy's playing a lot. The production's not necessarily there, but he's running more routes than anyone on the Patriots. And, we're starting to see a little bit of production here. 6 targets in 3 straight games, 45 yards or more in a couple games. He's a big play type of receiver, but, just someone, if he's out there, I definitely don't mind stashing, especially tying him to a good quarterback in Drake May. Ramel Keaton, he's someone I brought up last week. Obviously, the Raiders were on a bye. I didn't know about this guy until before last week when I was making this video. He went to Tennessee. He was an undrafted guy out of Tennessee. He was decently productive at Tennessee, kind of a big play guy, Ramel Keaton. He has decent size, 6'3", 200 pounds. So he has good size for a wide receiver. He ran a 4.47 at his pro day. I'm just looking at some of his measurables here. I don't think we have him in this system here. But anyways, he was getting more playing time. Obviously, with Devontae Adams gone, with Jacoby Myers has been beat up and stuff. I think he played about 40% of the snaps. DJ Turner is another guy who's playing even more than him that I would be adding, especially in best ball leagues. Guys who are out there 60, 70% of the time, they're going to catch a touchdown every now and then. They're going to have like a big game every now and then. Like, that's just how it works. So if you play best ball, these guys need to be rostered. And Ramel Keaton, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, is a guy that I would potentially be adding. And, it's an undrafted guy who is getting work, right? He's an undrafted rookie who's getting work. That always intrigues me. Like, to get to this point, I talked about it when Jalen Coker was getting some work. And basically saying it's impressive for an undrafted rookie to already be out there, like in the starting lineup and running routes and stuff. Usually they take a year to it means he's better than a lot of guys they have on the roster. So, someone to keep an eye on. Xavier Weaver is a guy, I made a video about him all the way back, in the pre-draft process, or maybe slightly after the draft. Xavier Weaver played at Colorado and, had almost over 900 yards his last year at Colorado. I believe he was drafted. I'm just double checking that. No, he was an undrafted free agent. He has good size, 6'1", 180 pounds, pretty good, decent measurables, runs a 4.47 and things like that. He's on the Arizona Cardinals, if I didn't say that already. This is more of a futures thing, right? This is definitely more of a futures thing. But the Cardinals, a good young up and coming offense. Like, what if Weaver carves himself out a role as the wide receiver 3 for the Cardinals next year? There could be some value there. Mac Hollins is someone that's more for a win now type of moment. With Keon Coleman probably he's already been ruled out. He might be missing several more weeks. I don't know what's going on with Amari Cooper. Mac Hollins is once again, like he was in the beginning of the year, a dynasty piece or a piece in fantasy that you could potentially think about, like in deeper leagues, starting in best ball. He's going to be worth it. He had 5 targets, 5 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown against Miami in week 9. 4 targets, 4 catches, 86 yards this last week against Indianapolis, and he played 88% of the snaps. He was out there the entire time. So, obviously if Amari Cooper comes back, that's probably going to be a little bit less, but he's still going to be involved. He's still going to be involved out there. They need someone else to play that other wide receiver spot. So I think it's going to be Mac Hollins. Ainias Smith, more of a future for the future. Ainias Smith here, Philadelphia Eagles, talked about him last week. He came off the injury report a couple of weeks ago. So he was basically injured all year until like week 8 or so. He's an interesting player. A lot of people liked him in the pre-draft process. He was drafted in the 5th round. So he has okay draft capital. Drafted in the 5th round. A lot of people liked him coming out of college a little bit. He's like a hybrid type of player, running back, wide receiver. He actually played running back for a year in college where he had 49 carries. So he's that hybrid type of player that I think adds something to this Eagles offense that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith don't bring. And I'm very interested to see Ainias Smith next year if they kind of work him into that wide receiver 3 role. I think it's a little bit too late this year because he just wasn't there in the beginning of the year, but he did play a little bit more this last week. 26% of the snaps, had 2 targets. He's always a candidate to get some rushing attempts, some rushing work. I think he could probably return kicks as well if they use him there. So Ainias Smith, someone for the future. If he's out there, I'd be picking him up. David Moore, talked about him last week. He's out there a lot as long as Adam Thielen's out. Obviously, Deontay Johnson's gone. David Moore is running probably the most routes, or he's up there with the most routes run on this team. He's playing over 80% of the snaps the last 3 weeks. Just another situation where guys who play 80% of the snaps at receiver position, you're not going to be able to count on David Moore. This is probably more for best ball, but he every now and then is going to have Shane Waldron is out as the offensive coordinator. Every now and then he's going to have a big game, and for best ball, that's some value there. Last wide receiver, this is more for the future, is Casey Washington. He's a guy I really, really like. Didn't expect him to do much this year. Did think he had an opportunity when Rondale Moore went out, but Ray McLeod has been so good for the Falcons, kind of filling that role for them. Casey Washington is a guy that I want for the future, though. Potentially slotting in as like the wide receiver 2 or 3, wide receiver 3 for the Falcons next year. He's talented. He has some good underlying metrics. So he's a guy that if people have moved on from him, he's not even ranked on Keep Trade Cut, which is, kind of crazy for a receiver. He's a guy that I want to be stashing for sure. Into some tight ends to kind of finish up here. Jaheim Bell, this is another future stash type of player. I think he was a 7th round pick for the Patriots. He's kind of a tweener tight end. He reminds me a little bit of like a Jonnu Smith or a Chiga Okonkwo, where they're more of a receiving tight end and they're not really going to do much in the blocking game. So that is going to limit him a bit because he's not going to be out there all the time. But we've seen guys like Chiga Okonkwo and Jonnu Smith this year have some success. Jaheim Bell, by a lot of people's metrics, was like one of their favorite tight ends going into the college season last year. Didn't have a great college career or year in 2023, but he's like super versatile. If you look at his stats from college, actually, he was actually decent in college. He had 39 catches for 500 yards and 2 touchdowns. I was thinking about another year, but he was actually pretty decent there. That's good production for a tight end. And if you look at his 2022 season at South Carolina, he had 25 catches, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, 73 carries, 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was more of like a hybrid fullback tight end type of player. And I think that's what he brings, a lot of versatility. So Hunter Henry's going to be on this team next year. Austin Hooper is probably not going to be on this team next year. Jaheim Bell is a future stash, in my opinion. Cade Stover, I mentioned him over and over and over. He's playing about 40 to 50% of the snaps. This might be more for the future unless Dalton Schultz gets hurt, but I like Cade Stover and his connection with Mr. CJ Stroud. Julian Hill is another guy. Julian Hill, who is the backup tight end for the Miami Dolphins. We do see him out there and getting some work every now and then. I think he's a little bit better of a blocker than Jonnu Smith. He actually played 55% of the snaps. He's super talented, athletic tight end. He's 6'4", 250. I think he can block decently well. I think he can receive. He's a pretty good receiving tight end as well. And we're just seeing, look at what Jonnu Smith is doing in this Miami offense. And I think they want a third option here, for the Dolphins. And again, you just kind of look at what Jonnu Smith has been doing. Jonnu Smith right now is on pace for 62 catches. 62 catches. He's on pace for 655 yards, and he has 1 touchdown. So he's not going to do much in the touchdown world, but he's on pace for about 2-3 touchdowns, right? Like those are startable tight end numbers, 60 catches and over 600 yards. What if sorry, I just saw that Dak Prescott season-ending injury. What if, Julian Hill becomes kind of the main tight end for the for the Dolphins next year? So Jonnu Smith, his contract basically breaks down as it's a 1-year contract or like a potential out next year if they want to get out of him. I don't think they will, but what if they do? And Julian Hill, who they're kind of like building up to be maybe the heir apparent. A.J. Barner, another guy that I talk about. A.J. Barner, and Noah Fant is out, could be started in these deeper dynasty leagues. He had 7 targets, 4 catches, and 27 yards last time we saw him. Obviously, Seahawks were on a bye, so I think Noah Fant's going to be back. But just in case he's not, even for the future, I kind of like A.J. Barner, 6'6", 250. He has some good measurables and things like that. So just looking at some of his 40 stuff, he doesn't have what is his 40 time? Let's see together. He ran now there's not much information out there. So last one, here's Brock Wright. If Laporta is going to miss time, sounds like it's not serious, but if he does miss time, Brock Wright might be a decent desperation play in these deeper leagues. So thank you guys for watching. Once again, join our Discord if you haven't already. Join our Discord. Link is in the description. It is free. Try and get together and put some dynasty leagues together. And don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Gets more eyes on the video. Appreciate you all, and good luck this week.